Radio Algeria International. You will not miss a single major political or economic event. Radio Algeria International, our voice in the world.
This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
The head of the High Authority for Transparency, Prevention and the Fight Against Corruption, Mrs. Salima Mousserati, has reaffirmed Algeria's continued commitment under the leadership of the President of the Republic. The Arab Parliamentary Union has strongly condemned the Israeli-occupying authorities' plan aimed at Judaizing the Cave of the Patriarchs in the West Bank town of Hebron. Iran and the E3 will hold nuclear talks in Istanbul on Friday, following warnings by the three European countries that failure to resume negotiations would lead to international sanctions being reimposed on Iran. Hello and welcome to Radio Algeria International. I'm Mariam Bershi. The Minister Delegate to the Minister of National Defence, Chief of Staff of the People's National Army, Army General Said Changri has paid a working visit of inspection to Central Supply Base Marty Mohammed Saudi, nicknamed Sidi Mustafa in Beni Morad, 1st Military Region. The visit is part of the following of the implementation of the plan to renovate and modernize the equipment and facilities developed at this important base. The Army General first inspected the various workshops at the base, such as the tracked vehicle reconditioning workshops, plumbing workshops and manufacturing workshops, and received the full explanation of the different stages of renovation and modernization. Army General Said Chingriha led the foundation stone for the design and construction of the vehicle workshop and 2 storage warehouses, and inaugurated the battery production line, which will enable self-sufficiency and cover all the needs of the People's National Army. The visit by the President of Zimbabwe, Mr. Emmerson Mnangagwa, to Algeria has reaffirmed the two countries' shared commitment to further strengthening their cooperation and promoting their relations. Mr. Sharfi has the details.
The Zimbabwean president's visit resulted in the signing of several agreements and memoranda of understanding covering various areas of bilateral cooperation, reflecting the two countries' will to consolidate their cooperation. In a joint press statement, the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, affirmed that his counterpart's visit reflects the common political will to develop bilateral relations. President Tebboune stressed that the agreements are a crucial step forward that strengthens bilateral cooperation and the legal frameworks that will set the two countries' partnership. He also stressed that the Zimbabwean president's visit highlighted the total convergence of positions between Algeria and Zimbabwe, notably on the promotion of peaceful solutions to conflicts in Africa, the respect for the sovereignty of states, the rejection of foreign interference, and the imperative of favoring African solutions to African problems. President Tebboune added the visit was also an opportunity to reiterate the condemnation of the crimes committed against the brotherly Palestinian people and reaffirm our support for their legitimate right to establish their independent state. The two sides have also renewed their support for the efforts of the United Nations to enable the Sahrawi people to exercise their right to self-determination, expressing his country's unwavering and constant solidarity with the Sahrawi people in their just struggle for self-determination. The President of Zimbabwe reaffirmed his country's support for dialogue to end the conflict in Palestine and to address the dramatic situation endured by the inhabitants of Gaza. He also said that Algeria is a friendly country with whom his country shares strong and deep-rooted relations of solidarity and struggle against colonialism, emphasizing the revolutionary nature of these relations, which stem from the spirit of solidarity and the ongoing struggle against colonialism and imperialism.
Here in Algiers, the head of the High Authority for Transparency, Prevention and the Fight Against Corruption, Mrs. Salima Mousserati, has reaffirmed Algeria's continued commitment under the leadership of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, to fighting corruption and promoting the principles of transparency. Addressing the African Anti-Corruption Day, Mrs. Mousserati stated that Algeria's organization of this African meeting once again illustrates its ongoing commitment to fighting the scourge of corruption and to enshrining transparency, integrity and good governance principles that have been set as a priority by the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, since his election. Mrs. Moserati underscored President Tebboune's view of asset recovery as a sovereign duty and highlighted Algeria's efforts to fight corruption in Africa through cooperation, legal reform, and support for continental anti-corruption initiatives. In this regard, she emphasized that asset recovery is a major challenge in Africa, obstructed by legal and political hurdles, both locally and internationally.
The issue of asset recovery in Africa is one of the most prominent challenges facing development efforts and the promotion of good governance on the continent. The process of recovering these assets faces a number of legal, political and administrative obstacles, both at the level of the African countries themselves and in terms of cooperation with foreign countries that host those assets.
Mrs. Moserati called for a united African front against corruption, promoting integrity and effective tools to recover stolen funds and restore trust in institutions. In the same context, the President of the Association of Anti-Corruption Authorities in Africa, Mr. Khaled Abderrahman, held Algeria's strong commitment to transparency, integrity and African cooperation. He said the event reflects Africa's united stance against corruption and highlighted the Association of Anti-Corruption Authorities in Africa focus on training, research, international cooperation and expertise exchange.
It is time to move from exchanging words to exchanging expertise, and from showcasing achievements to integrating policies, and to make of our nation a true platform for action, one that is not burdened by protocol complexities, but driven by the will to cooperate and advance.
The Minister of Justice and Keeper of the Seals, Mr. Lotfi Boujemhad, said that Algeria had submitted 335 requests for international judicial cooperation to 32 countries as part of its efforts to trace, freeze and confiscate criminal proceeds.
African countries, as an important part of the international community, suffer from the dilemma of corruption due to the lack of transparency, accountability and oversight. Promoting good governance and combating this phenomenon are closely linked. Therefore, everyone should engage in unifying all efforts.
That was the Minister of Justice and Keeper of the Seals, Mr. Lotfi Boujemhad. The Arab Parliamentary Union has strongly condemned the Israeli occupying authorities' plan aimed at Judaizing the Cave of the Patriarchs in the West Bank town of Hebron. In a statement released on behalf of the Union by the Speaker of the National People's Assembly, Ibrahim Boughali, expressed his dismay at the Israeli occupying authorities' scheme to take control of the handling and supervision of the religious site. The Israeli army has pursued its pounding of the Gaza Strip, killing at least 5 Palestinians and wounding scores of others. This came as the Palestinian Hamas movement urged for steps to be taken to denounce the nightmare the Palestinian population is subjected to in the besieged enclave. The call was made by the movement's representative here in Algiers, Youssef Hamdan.
The Arab and Islamic community and the free people of the world are called upon to engage in all forms of protests, rallies and events, and to raise their voices loudly and apply all forms of political pressure, diplomatic, parliamentary, labor and student, in solidarity with our people in the Gaza Strip and in support of their steadfastness and against the war of extermination and starvation and against the isolation of our people until we stop the brutal aggression and end this unjust blockade. We believe that Arab, Islamic and international efforts must be pooled and that there should be one voice in solidarity with our people in the Gaza Strip against the war of extermination and starvation being waged against more than 2 million people. Let's all participate in stopping this extermination and put an end to the disregard shown by the criminal Benjamin Netanyahu and his fascist gang for international and humanitarian law and international and humanitarian conventions and norms.
Earlier, UNRWA reiterated his call for a lifting of the Israeli blockade on Gaza that prevents the entry of food and fuels to the territory. The choice of the occupied Sahrawi town of Dakhla as the scenery for filmmaking has triggered off condemnations denouncing attempts to restore the image of the Moroccan occupation. Yesterday, the Sahrawi government condemned the filmmaking planned to take place in Dakhla, considering the move a violation of international law and of the deontology adopted in art and culture. It affirmed that making films or undertaking an artistic activity in the occupied Western Sahara territory without the approval of the legitimate representative Sahrawi people, the Polisario Front, run counter the international law. In a similar move, the representative of the coordination mechanisms for action in occupied Dakhla, Ahmed Salim Abdelbaki, condemned the film-making plan, which he affirmed is just aimed at hiding the reality.
The decision to film The Odyssey by Christopher Nolan in Dakhla, a city in the occupied Western Sahara, is not just a location choice. It is a painful reminder to the Sahrawi people that their voices, their rights, and their homeland are still being ignored. Dakhla, though beautiful, is not just a backdrop for cinema. It is a land under illegal occupation, where the original inhabitants have been silenced and displaced for decades. Filming there without their consent risk turning their suffering into a scenery art built on injustice. The Sahrawi people deserve freedom, not to have their land used to tell stories that are not their own, while their own story remains untold.
That was the representative for the coordination or of the coordination mechanism for action in occupied Dakhla, Ahmed Salim Abdelbaki. And as mentioned earlier in our top stories, Iran, Britain, France and Germany will hold nuclear talks in the Turkish capital, Istanbul, on Friday, following warnings by the three European countries that the failure to resume negotiations would lead to the reinstatement of international sanctions being reimposed on Iran. Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson Ismail Baghouti said that the meeting between Iran, Britain, France and Germany will take place at the deputy foreign minister level. The talks scheduled for Friday come after the foreign ministers of the three nations, as those European countries are known, as well as the European Union's foreign policy chief, held their first call 4 days ago with Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi since Israel and the US attacked Iranian nuclear facilities a month ago. The three European countries, along with China and Russia, are the remaining parties to a 2015 nuclear deal reached with Iran, from which the United States withdrew in 2018, that lifted sanctions on the Middle Eastern countries in return for restrictions on its nuclear program. The Kremlin has announced that Moscow was in favor of a new round of peace talks between Russia and Ukraine. 2 days ago, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that Kyiv has sent Moscow an offer to hold another round of peace talks this week and that he wants to speed up negotiations for a ceasefire. The Russian presidency spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, told the state television that Russian President Vladimir Putin is ready to move towards a peace settlement for Ukraine, but Moscow's main objective is to achieve its goals. Let's recall that Ukraine and Russia have held 2 rounds of talks in Istanbul on May 16th and June 2nd that led to the exchange of thousands of prisoners of war and the remains of soldiers. However, the two sides have made no breakthrough towards a ceasefire or settlement. And in Japan, the Japanese Premier Shigeru Ishiba has vowed to remain in office after his ruling coalition faced a significant defeat in upper house elections, prompting some of his own party to doubt his leadership as the opposition weighed to no confidence motion. The embattled Prime Minister told a news conference that he would remain in office to oversee tariff talks with the United States and other challenges such as rising consumer prices that are straining the world's 4th largest economy. That's it for today's news bulletin. Stay tuned on Radio Algeria International.